Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Sackage, and I'm here with Grant Cameron tonight. And we are here with a very special pal of ours, a fellow Canadian to Grant, and one of my best pals in this whole community. And that is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. So thank you, Dave. I'm glad you could come on.
Thank you. And Nicole, you are a gem in this UFO world. And it's such a pleasure to be able to call you a friend and to, also share screen time with my mentor, my idol in the UFO field and the research field in Grant Cameron. Grant, you know what you mean to me. And I know you hate it when I talk like this, but I don't really care. I'm going to do it every time. And Grant, you mean the world to me in this field, and I could never repay you what you have done to help me grow, not only as a person but as a radio broadcaster in this field.
I respect what you've done yourself, and you mean a lot to me. And you are a fellow Canadian, and you've done in terms of broadcasting. As you know, we don't have any coast to coast, so you're it in Canada. You're the coast to coast in Canada now. And whatever I can do to help you build your channel, we'll do it to get the word out.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you coming on in.
Yeah, you're in your studio. Explain to the people watching where you are and what your studio is and how this all works. You run Spaced Out Radio for people who may be new. Explain what's going on here.
Well, I have a studio inside my house. It's very high tech. Believe it or not, the studio in my own house is probably more technically savvy than the first couple of radio stations I've worked at when I got out of broadcasting school in 1998 and then embarked on my journalism career. But this is where we host Spaced Out Radio, and I tried to make it as rustic and as comfortable as possible because where I broadcast is out of central British Columbia, literally on top of the mountains. And, in my area, it's very rustic, it's very scenic. Grant, you can attest, you've been up here. And, there in my area, there's a lot of Sasquatch, there's a lot of paranormal sightings, there's a lot of UFOs and people claiming ET abduction. And so it's very interesting to see what happens. I just wish this stuff would happen to me a little bit more often because I need more stories, man. I'm sick and tired of hearing everybody else. I want to have some myself again.
One more question, then I'll turn it over to Nikki. You talked about your background in terms of radio broadcasting. Sort of explain your background and how you got dragged into the UFO field.
Well, that's actually a good question. I graduated the British Columbia Institute of Technology in 1998 with my diploma in broadcast journalism. I then embarked on a nearly 10-year career working in journalism. My last 7 working in Vancouver for a radio station where I was a sports reporter. So being a sports junkie, to be able to cover the Canucks, the Grizzlies in their final year, the CFL BC Lions, PGA tours, junior hockey, everything along that ilk was just a phenomenal experience for me, except I got out in 2007 because I really wanted to know what it was like to have food on my table and gas in my tank at the same time. And radio is a wonderful, wonderful career. I love it. It really is like a drug where once you get into it, you cannot ever have it leave your system. And I'm very, very thankful that I was able to have that time. But I ended up embarking on a career. I was going through a divorce at that time. And my ex-wife hated my radio career because I was always gone. I lived literally 2 separate lives. I lived an hour out of town where my family was. And then I had my Vancouver life. And, burning the candle at both ends just wasn't conducive. So by the time I decided to change careers, we were already done and ended up going through a pretty ugly divorce. And so as for my paranormal experiences and what brought me back was in 2011 is when I saw the angel of death in my mother's eyes. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But after 3 years of trying to learn about experiences and having a multitude of happenings very, very fast, from paranormal to ufological to cryptid with seeing Sasquatch, and then the aliens came. A good friend of mine, Johnny Enoch, basically said to me, you know, you are someone who has had a lot of experiences. You got a radio background. This field is very, very limited with people who have that combination. Why don't you ever think of starting your own radio show? And I said, and when I left radio in 2007, I knew nothing about online radio. I had no idea. When I walked away from radio, you know, podcasting was just kind of starting up. And I thought a podcast was just a re-recording that somebody put on their website. I had no idea there was this entire world of digital broadcasting that had gone on. And I think if I would have known that, and I would have known back at the time, and I wasn't so naive that there were so many different radio shows and programs and podcasts out there about this phenomena, I probably never would have done it, because it's extremely time consuming with what we do. And, you know, and I've given up a lot over the years, you know, birthday parties and gatherings and family dinners and concerts and everything, because we have to do a show. And it's like having two full-time jobs, but I'm only getting paid for one. And and you know what, but that's the sacrifice I have to make. That is the way I can contribute to this society we call the paranormal world. I'm not a researcher, I'm an experiencer. I'm not someone who can bang out, you know, 3-4 books or novels a year. I don't have that ability to do it, because I've never written a book before. But what I can do is I know how to speak, and I know how to speak on a microphone. I'm not sure about the whole YouTube thing, because I definitely have a face for radio and maybe a voice for print for some. But the big thing is, you know, we have to be able to get the message across. And this is the way that I've been able to do it, by bringing that journalism background into a field that is very much lacking the professionalism of journalism and any type of journalistic integrity. And that's what I try and bring. Some people like it, some people don't. But on the flip side, we keep growing, so we must be doing something right.
Well, I agree with you there, and not to bag on anybody else's show, because I've canvassed a lot over the last few years, and you know, I'm always like, oh, this one's great, this one's good, this one's nostalgic, it's been carried over decades. But you know, Dave, you do really have something special with SOR, and I'm not just tooting your horn. You know, I consistently come back to your program night after night after night after night. And if I miss it at night, I'm watching it the next morning at work. And I started doing that before you and I were even pals. And that's, I think, what made me reach out and want to get to know you better, is because this program's quality just keeps getting better, or at least holds the bar pretty high and stays consistent. SOR brings in not just the ufology crowd, but the paranormal crowd, the cryptid crowd. And we're all standing around going, how do these things fit together? Well, your show gives us a platform to kind of hear these stories and hear these professionals at work and how they think these things come together. And they come together on your show. So what better platform for that to happen?
Well, it's not just me. You have to have a team around you. Grant knows that very well, with you being a part of his team. Desta, Sinead, you have to have a team around you in order to make that success happen. And I have surrounded myself with good people. Some have come, some have gone, some have been able to you know, help out. Others have helped out for a brief amount of time. You know, I think of my booking guy, Corey. I'm in British Columbia. He's down in Texas. But I mean, the guests he's been able to get for our show have been phenomenal. Guests that I never thought we would ever speak to on this show. And, you know, I look at Katie, or who does all of our social media. She does a phenomenal job at keeping everything going at hand. And Grant, I know you can attest to this, because none of us are getting paid for this. We're doing this out of our own will and our own, lack of a better term, destiny, that we feel we need to do this. And when you have volunteers helping you out, sometimes a volunteer can only give a couple of months. Sometimes they can give a few years. It all depends on the love and the passion that they have for it. And at times it's been a rocky road. Our weekends have always been tough. You try and make deals with people who you think have your best interest in mind, and in the end they don't, and you have to part ways, and then you got to deal with all the internet drama that seems to follow that. But I mean, that's part of the learning experience. You try to take people at their word, and you try and give them your best, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work. But on the flip side, for those that it does work with, you're blessed to have that opportunity. And I've been blessed over the years to have a number of people, believe in me, believe in what the show is about, want to help out, have done great work over that. And that's all you can really ask, because, when someone volunteers their time, I don't care if we were paying somebody, the greatest gift that somebody can give you is their time and their passion and their belief that they have your best interests at heart. And that is a very difficult thing to find. And when you find that, you have to care for it. You have to cradle it, and you have to respect it, because if you don't, you're only shooting yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Why 7 nights a week and 3 hours a night? Why so much?
Stupidity. That goes back to the start, where I didn't realize how many shows were out there, how much competition was out there. I literally thought when we fired up, I'd never heard of a guy like Jimmy Church. I'd never heard of Clyde Lewis. I'd never heard of Connie Willis. I'd never heard of anybody of that magnitude. The people that I had heard of, because Grant, much like me, or much like you, growing up in Canada, when you listen to late night radio, it was only two voices. It was either Art Bell or it was George Norrie, and that's it. And so when I started Spaced Out Radio, not knowing a thing about digital radio or Blog Talk Radio or Spreaker or Mixler or whatever, even YouTube for that matter, I didn't know. And so I figured, you know what? Stupidly, I thought point blank that if I do this 5 nights a week, maybe it could get picked up. Maybe there's a radio station or stations out there that are looking for that opportunity. Let's give people an option outside of coast to coast. And that isn't a slap on the face of coast to coast, or I'm not trying to be competition, but you know what? They've had a monopoly for a long time. And like many of you out there watching this, to me, the one thing I always loved about Coast to Coast was the weird stuff. That's why I listened at night. I wasn't in it for science or dietary supplements or anything that they've changed their ways to. I listened to it for the hounds of hell, or somebody trying to fly their plane into Area 51, or, EVPs on a paranormal hunt, or people telling their stories about having Sasquatch, looking in their bedroom window. That's what I wanted. And over time, I lost that, and as a lot of people did. But little did I know, there was plenty of competition out there. And I started off at 5 days. Actually, I started off at 7 days a week. And then I cut the weekends out, found a weekend host who was there for a couple of years. And then he and I didn't work out due to professional differences. And then we moved on to a couple other people. The weekends have been really tough to get going. We have Michael W. Hall there on Sundays and Saturdays. We don't even have a show going on right now because I'm just way too tired to train someone else. But we started off as a 2-hour show. And then after probably a year, our audience started growing to the point where they demanded it to be 3 hours. So that's where we've been ever since 2016 is 3 hours. And, you get to the point where the audience keeps on growing, you almost fear to take a night off, because what happens if all of a sudden that special set of ears is listening? What happens if that owner of a radio company tunes in, but you decide to be off, right? So that's why I'm almost fearful of missing that one set of ears that could have an impact, rather than deciding, oh well, I just don't feel like doing it today, so I'm not going to do it today. No, I can't, man. I made a
Right.
commitment, and I'm proud. On a personal level, I'm proud I've stuck with that commitment, and the audience has I think enjoys that too.
I agree with you. And now that we've gotten all this background talk out of the way, because I think we could continue to go on, because you have collaborated with quite a few people in this celebration of online radio, I guess you could put it, in your endeavor. And you've already spoken that you are an experiencer. And do you feel like this is part of the experience for you? Like this is what you're supposed to be doing, is bringing people together and talking about this?
I thought at first that's what it was. Now I have no clue. I think when you go down the rabbit hole, you kind of go, and I like to describe Grant like this, and I mentioned to him when he was last on my show, there are so many doors that need opening. And every time we open a door, we have no idea how long that path is beyond the door. And you have to follow it. And so that's where what I'm doing. And I don't feel like quitting. I don't feel like moving on. I don't feel like this is something that I'm ready to give up on yet. I have fun. I have a lot of fun doing this. I'm a night owl anyways. If I wasn't doing the show, I'd be sitting watching reruns of American Pickers or The Simpsons or the First 48 or something along those lines. That's what I would be doing. I'm up until 12:30, 1 o'clock at night every night. I might as well be doing something that I'm having fun with. And it's become more of a hobby. It has become more of a job, but the stories are impactful. And that's what I enjoy about it all, is meeting these really cool people who, one of the thrills that I get is when you have someone on, and to this day I'll still get a lot of people on who've never heard about our show. And it doesn't surprise me, but when they're done, they're like, holy cow, that's 2.5 hours. That's the show. That went fast. That was amazing. Can I come on again? Well, sure you can. Why not? And you just keep going. It gets in your blood. But is it what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, spiritually speaking, when I decided to do this, I was going through a lot. I was going through a lot of ET contact. I was seeing UFOs all the time. I was going through a lot at work, and it's a busy household, 3 kids at the time, now down to 2, right? Because one's moved out. But I mean, you look at it and you decide how much are you willing to make that sacrifice? How much? And the one thing with this is, and a lot of people may shake their head or say, oh, it's all about the money for Dave. No, I would love to make this a career. I would love to make it a career. It technically is a career that I've made for myself, except it's an unpaid career, but if I'm ever given the opportunity, I would love my shot. I would love my shot at broadcasting on 100 radio stations a night, or 500, or I'd love my shot at something like that just as much as anybody. But I mean, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The spiritual journey, the people that I've met have all been worth it, and the relationships I've been able to cultivate. And I mean, that's what's awesome about it all.
I agree with you there, Dave. And that leads me to a question that I want to ask. You do have this unique opportunity with your show to where you can have on guests and get them to speak about their knowledge base or their research. And you do have that sneaky way of being able to apply it to your own experiences. Do you have certain guests, or would you say who have you sought out to maybe help you along with your own rabbit holes and your own journey, and who has taught you?
The people that it's funny, the person who has helped me the most through my own journey has never been on Spaced Out Radio, and his name is Pascal,
Yeah.
and he is the most amazing and one of the most important people ever in my life. And he is a giant bear of a French Canadian who lives in British Columbia. He's about 6'4", about 330 pounds. He's built like a football offensive lineman. And when he shakes your hand, he lets you know that he is a very big, strong man. But he's got the heart of gold. And spiritually speaking, he is someone that has made the most impact on my life. And I could never thank him enough for it, because a lot of the questions that I had on my own personal journey have been as a result of him holding my hand and going down that rabbit hole. It's almost like that's his job in life on a spiritual sense, is to hold the people's hands and take them to the journey that they are supposed to go on, and almost lead the way until he feels you can stand on your own. I've tried and begged to have him come on the show, and he just says, "No, I'm not ready yet. No, it's not time." And I'm like, "Dude, it is time." Selfishly speaking, because I've been bragging about you for almost 6 years. You got to come on the damn show. And he's like, "Nope, not ready."
Oh.
But he is. What I've learned from him, every now and again, I need a refresher course, and him and I don't talk every day. We don't talk once a week or even once a month. But if I need something, or he's there for me, and I could never ever thank him enough for the amazing impact that he has made on my life.
We should maybe make up an SOR t-shirt that says, "Let's go, Pascal." And
Yeah.
that might entice him to come on the radio.
Well,
No, Grant, we
he
have
loves it,
somebody like that. His name's Giuliano.
Yeah.
He keeps saying he's not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people, that's not their shtick, but everybody has their role. Dave, you're talking about your experience. Maybe you should give a quick overview of your experience, because I've had you try to promote your story at a couple different conferences. So go through a little bit about your story of because it's pretty weird and it's pretty spectacular.
Yes.
Right. Do you want me to go into detail, or do you want just the highlights?
Well, yeah. What do you think, Nicole?
Well, might as well start it off. December 13th, 2011. I was having a dinner at my house, an early Christmas dinner for my daughter, who was going on a Christmas cruise with my ex-wife's parents, and would be gone over Christmas and New Year's. So I decided that what I would do is, on our side of the family, we would hold a Christmas dinner for her. And I had my sister over, I had my nephews and my nieces over, I had my parents, my grandmother, my uncle, some friends. We had about 22, 25 people over at the house that night. And, we did the big turkey dinner with all the fixins. And then after dinner, we all sat on the, my kitchen was kind of half a kitchen and then half a television room as well. And so everybody was kind of sat in there, and the hockey game was going on. Vancouver was playing Columbus, and it was a good time going on. And it came around. We finished dinner. My daughter was just finished opening her presents, and it was about 7:45 at night. And my parents announced that they were leaving, and I remember being a little pissed off that it's only 7:45, and here I got a house full of family. My parents are always griping the family doesn't get together. Well, here's one of the events. My parents are leaving early, and then I find out my dad says, "Well, we got to get home to watch Dancing with the Stars," and I'm like, "Come on!" I remember saying to my dad, "Really, Dancing with the Stars is more important than family time." And my dad, being a stubborn Albertan, said, yep. And I was like, oh, whatever. So my parents announced they were leaving, and I happened to be in my dining room, which leads into my living room. And then my living room leads into my dining room. And then there's a doorway that kind of goes into the kitchen. And my parents announced that they were leaving. And I had my hands full because I was cleaning up some dishes. And I put the dishes on the cups or whatever it was on the dining room table. And then I walked through the doorway. I was going to walk through the doorway to give my mom a hug because she was in the kitchen. And as I started to make my mom was right there in front of the doorway, and I opened up my arms to give my mom a hug like everybody would. And I realized that there was no sound coming from the other room. There was no sound from the Canucks game on TV. And I opened up my arms, I look at my mom, and my mom has these beautiful blue eyes that are now jet black, and her pupils are white. And she's looking at me, and I kind of turned my head like this, kind of like, what the hell am I looking at? And my mom kind of got this look on her face like, oh, you see me. And she then shook her head. Her eyes went blue. Sound on the television, people running around. And in that split second, when I was looking at her and I recognized what I was seeing, I knew I was looking into the eyes of the angel of death. And I immediately got sick to my stomach and wanted to cry. And like I said, my mom shook her head. Everything else started. She comes in, she gives me a hug, and she walks away. And I'm sitting there standing, and my partner Jolene comes in, and she's like, are you okay? Because I booted it. I beelined it for my bedroom. And she goes, are you okay? I said, I just saw the angel of death in my mother's eyes. And she's like, what? I said, yeah. She goes, so I explained what I saw. And so quickly I gathered myself together, wondering if this was going to be the last time I saw my mom. And I walked back quickly to the front door, give my mom another hug, give my dad a hug, walk them out to their vehicle. They drive away to watch Dancing with the Stars. And I walk inside because now I got to bring it together because I still have a house full of family and friends. So a couple hours later, I end up, putting the kids to bed, and it's just Jolene and I hanging out, and she's into all this spirituality Zen bullshit, and I'm just the kind of guy like, what the hell is going on? And all of a sudden, that journalism thing from years past starts kicking in, and start getting all these questions, and I'm like, yeah, this is crap. And so I figured, you know what? I don't know what the hell I just saw. It was weird. I don't get it. I'm wondering if this is the last time I'm going to see my mom. And so Jolene recommends that we go into the living room. And we had a couch and a love seat. And in between them was this square table. And she lights all these candles up on this table, all these white candles. And she's like, you just sit over there. I'll sit over here. And you tell me what you saw. Just relax and tell me what you saw. Well, I had no idea what channeling was. Okay. So right here, my hand, I have a remote control. My idea of channeling was going like this, as fast as I could to try and find something on television to watch. Boy, was I wrong. So I'm sitting on the couch, and I feel myself getting more and more relaxed. And I started channeling the angel of death. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said through me. It lasted about 38 minutes. There was a recording of it, but thanks to iPhones being the way they are and breaking down and going to the blue screen of death, that audio no longer exists.
Oh, yeah.
But he basically told me that, I was not supposed to see him. But because I did, he felt he owed me an explanation. Now, my mother's a 2-time cancer survivor. And for anybody who knows, who's been watching me for a while, they'll know that I have really long hair for a while, and that's because I donated it to. I always wanted to donate hair on behalf of my mother for somebody who needed a wig due to cancer, and so I was lucky enough to be able to do that. But the angel of death said to me, sometimes it's hard. He said, you were not, he goes, basically, you're not supposed to see me, but because you did, I felt I owed you an explanation. He goes, if you don't start taking better care of your mother and treating her with more love and respect, I'm going to take her home. He never said heaven. He never said hell. He said, take her home. And he said that my mother was indeed still very ill from 2 bouts of chemotherapy and radiation. And, you know, my mother was the type of person, she got addicted. We felt she got addicted to the sympathy. This is where I become the a-hole son. Okay. She got addicted to the sympathy. Like, you'd call her up and you'd be like, hey mom, how you doing? Or pardon me, she'd pick up the phone and she'd be like, hello. And you'd be like, hey mom, how you doing? Oh, I'm so sick. The pain, the pain, the pain. Right. And finally it would be like, really? Really? You just answered the phone and you sounded completely normal. Right. And it got frustrating because this was happening over the last couple of years. And so the angel of death, when I chatted with him through channeling, basically kicked my ass and said that my mother was indeed quite ill still. And if we didn't start showing her more love and respect, he was taking her home. And I said, well, what can I do to keep her alive? And he's like, I want you to tell everybody in your family about this experience. And I want you to start phoning your mom, tell her you love her, things like that. So I did. 9 years later, my mother is still alive. And little did I know that that was going to open up the Pandora's box of the paranormal for me, because within days, my house became very haunted. I remember going to a rock concert and jokingly saying to a friend of mine that she was going to date the lead guitarist of this band. And 11 months later, she runs face to face into him in Las Vegas. So all of a sudden I started getting these premonitions, not premonitions like, we're going to, there's going to be an earthquake on May 15th, 2023. Nothing like that. Just with my friends, I started getting these weird premonitions of things that were going to happen. It was never anything bad. I started becoming all of a sudden more intuitive. All of a sudden you're walking around and there's ghosts, and you're seeing ghosts, and you're driving down the road at night and you're seeing shadow figures walking along the side of the road. And so this is when I met my good mentor and guru, Pascal, and he sat down and he's like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And stupid me says, let's go all the way. So Pascal starts putting me through all of these tests. And one of the Grant, I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you ever been in a blacked out room, like where you can't even see your hand in front of your face?
Well, I guess, but not really. No, I know what you're talking about. No.
Okay. So
a float tank. Yeah.
So Pascal creates this blackout room in his condo, and literally he's got the windows taped off with 3 of the thickest plastic garbage bags that you could keep. So there's no light coming in. We've got all the light off in his rooms. We've got towels around the door. Okay, so that way there's no possibility of any light coming in. And he's in one lawn chair on one side of the room. I'm facing him in another lawn chair in the middle of this bedroom. And it is amazing what you can see when you can't see a thing. We literally watched this, lack of a better term, this solar system appear between us up near the roof of this bedroom, and ghosts coming in and out. I remember looking to my left and I looked down and I saw my deceased dog sitting beside me. you know, I mean, to the point where you couldn't see your hand right here, but all of a sudden when you were so attuned into what was going on, I remember looking down at my hand and I could see a glowing outline of my fingers, because humans actually glow. That's how they're able to see us in night vision, is we glow. Okay.
Does Pascal know this? How does he set this up? Has he done this before?
No, he had never done it before. He had just, well, let's try it out, see what happens. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
So do you think you guys opened up a portal? I mean,
Oh,
in
hell
this
yeah.
dark room. So that's,
oh hell
yeah.
yeah. Oh, completely. So we did that 3 times, and that was just incredible. Never saw any aliens, but I remember Pascal in about 2013, he started in one of my sessions, he started saying, my guides want you to start getting more involved with ETs. And I went, no. He goes, why not? He goes, what's the worst that's going to happen? I said, dude, did you not see fire in the sky? Did you not read Communion? I'm not being no bitch to any aliens, right? I'm not doing that. And he goes, come on, they're not all that bad. I said, no, I have no intention. Well, then the UFOs started, right?
Okay. Well,
And
hey,
yeah,
why don't we take a quick break with that? That's a nice cliffhanger. And then the UFOs started. So why don't we take a quick pause and we can come back with
Okay.
that?
Well, I'll go walk the dog.
Yeah, let's go walk the dog.
Okay.
Pause. Resume. Okay, we're back. And Dave, you just left us with that nice cliffhanger of, and then the UFOs began. So let's pick it right up from there.
well, in 2013, Pascal was really trying to push me towards more UFOs and more ET contact. And I was really adverse to that because, like I said, I had seen fire in the sky. Communion to this day is the only book I have never finished reading. And I stopped reading that in 1999. I was a brand new father. And I remember I was cuddling my little girl at the time. She was just 4 months old, and 4 or 5 months old. And it got to the part in the book where Whitley Strieber was on the UFO, and he looked beside him, and his son was sitting right beside him on the UFO with the aliens around. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. I freaked me the hell out. So I've never, ever finished Communion. I got the book somewhere in my house. I have no idea where it is. I know I've never got rid of it though. But, Pascal was like, well, what if you don't have a choice? I said, whoa. You've been teaching me through all this Zen and G crap that I have the ability to have my free will. And he goes, well, what if you don't have free will with this? What if they want you to go that route? And I'm like, nope. Well, little did I know, we were kind of stargazers and real homebodies. And we would, on a clear night living about an hour east of Vancouver, we'd sit out on our patio and we'd put the lawn chairs back into a lay down position. And we would just stand up and stare at the stars. And we'd count satellites. But all of a sudden we started noticing something that, one of the biggest things that, and trust me, later on, I know we'll get to this story, but I'm just going to preface this. How can I put it? When you see these power-ups by these satellites where all of a sudden they go really bright, that's one of the biggest, in my opinion, controversies in ufology. Is it a UFO, or is it iridium or shining off the sun? Is it the metallics on the satellite that are catching the sun's rays and causing it to brighten up? And that's what we thought it was for the longest time. And I'll get to more of that later. I know that story will come up, but it was weird because every night we would go out and we would count 20, 30, 40 satellites, and a number of them right over top of our house all the time would seem to all of a sudden get brighter, real bright. And then they would go back, and then they would get real bright again, and then they go back, and then bright again, and then they go back. And it always happened over top of our house. And it was weird because, well, I wonder what's causing that. Because then I read up on satellites. The satellites don't have lights on them. Well, what the heck is causing this? And so we started noticing this more and more. And then as we were, Pascal and I kept working on our paranormal stuff and channeling and communication with entities and everything like that. I remember him saying in 2013, this was around May of 2013. He's like, well, the UFOs are starting to come around, and he goes, is there anything else you want to see since you don't want to play with the aliens? And I said, well, I have this real strong feeling I'm going to see Bigfoot. And he's like, well, when? And I said, I have this feeling in July. Well, July comes around and don't see any Bigfoot, you know? So August comes around, nothing. September comes around, and my buddy, we went over to his house, and he had this beautiful 10-acre farm where a lot of weird things happen. It was like his own mini little East Eddy ranch. And there were only 2 houses on his street. He had 10 acres, and his elderly neighbors had 6.5 acres, and both properties were horseshoed by thick British Columbia forest. And, you know, we're in the back field and in the back forest, and he wanted to show me what had transpired when he was a kid, where he had this weird paranormal experience. And as we were walking through the forest, we came across this tree that was probably about, that round, that was snapped at 8.5 feet high. And in my experimentation with everything, you know, I've always had an interest in Sasquatch. I said, you know, from what I know, Sasquatch likes to break trees. And we stuck around, and all of a sudden we got that feeling that we were being watched. And we look about 100 feet ahead of us, and behind this tree, in the shadows of this tree, we saw what looked to be a Sasquatch peering out at us. And we watched him for about 5 minutes. And on the farm, they had a rule, and we abided by the rule that we could go there anytime we wanted to see and experience anything that we wanted. But the one rule was no cameras, no video photography or filming. They wanted whatever was on that property to know that that was a safe area, that they could come and go as they please. And so here we are standing there watching this thing, and Dave finally said, his name is Dave too, he finally says, well, let's leave it be. We want it to come back. So we both put our hands up. We said, hey, thank you so much for allowing us to see you. And then we turned, and Dave turned first, and then I started to turn. But at about 75 feet, I started seeing this tree branch shaking really profusely. And that's where I saw the second one walk right through where that tree branch was shaking. And I got a full right side and back profile of it. And to this day, it was the biggest thing that I've ever seen. I've been close to bears. Okay. I've been within feet of bears. I know a bear. Okay. This wasn't a bear. And so I yelled at him. I said, Dave, did you see the second one? And he's like, no, he was already like 20 feet down the path. So here's me scurrying my fat ass to catch up with him, because I don't want to, piss off the Sasquatch that we just saw. So we walk back, and the UFOs keep coming. And it got to the point where I was calling people over, just say, hey, it's a nice warm summer night. Why don't you come on over? We'll have a beer on my patio, and we'll watch the UFOs fly by. And my friends would be like, really? UFOs? Yeah, UFOs. Come on over. And I remember this one time, I had friends of ours over, and the wife grew up in a very Catholic family. And so all of this stuff that I was now getting into absolutely freaked her out. she'd be doing like Hail Marys and all this stuff around me, trying to, keep the devil away. And so I invited them over and we're having a beer, and it's about 9:45 at night, and got the music playing on the patio. We're having a good time. I got one of those patio fire pits that you could have a little mini fire. So I got that burning and just having a great night. And I look over to the, let's see, my house faced south. So even though I was 10 miles away from the Canada-US border, I could still see the United States and Washington State, because on July 4th, I could literally, it was great where I lived, because on Canada Day, on July 1st, I could watch the fireworks from my city and the city that was south of me. And then on the 4th of July, I could see enough of the United States where I could see all the fireworks going off in the US as well, because I lived up on a mountain. And so here we are standing on my patio, and I'm looking to the east, and all of a sudden I see this rod start coming through the sky, and it was like an orange rod, and it looked like, remember, one of those cartoon dumbbells with a big ball on the end of it. You got the rod. Okay, so the rod was orange, and it had these silver orbs attached on either end. And I watched this thing, and it comes out of nowhere, and it starts heading from the southeast to the northwest where we are. And I'm like, I said to my friends, I said, holy shit, look at that. And they're like, what? And I point, and they're like, what is that? What is it? I said, I told you we'd see UFOs tonight. Right. And Catholic lady, she's like, trying to hide now, right? Like, the aliens are coming, and I'm like, this is incredible. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And I said to them, I don't think we're done yet. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, I think we're going to see more. They're like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know. I just know. And about half an hour later, when if you have a bottle of beer, I'm using my iced tea here as an example, but when you take a sip, when you get like about that halfway, you kind of tilt your head back. So here I am on my first beer of the night. I've got about that much left, and I tilt my head back. And as my eyes look up, I put the beer bottle down and I said, what the F is that? And they're like, what? I said, above the house. What is that? Like, oh my God. Like, I am now crapping bricks, because over top of my house is a black triangle. And the undercarriage of this black triangle is all of these orange rods that are connected by silver orbs. And I watched this thing, and all three of us, now there's three of us on the patio, and we are freaking the hell out. And we watch it fly silently north. And it was like a door opened in the sky, and this thing flew in, and eventually, like, this is a UFO, it just disappeared through that imaginary door. And we were freaking the hell out. My buddy was like, how did you know this was going to happen? Oh my God, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know. I'm freaking out, right? Because I didn't know, right? But I'll tell you, I didn't sleep for a few days, and I went through Google, and I went through YouTube, and I went through every possible thing that I could find. I was down at the bookstore trying to find everything on black triangles to see what it was that I saw and if other people had seen it. Now, I found lots of black triangle photos, but they all had the lights in each corner. Mm-hmm. There was nothing with orange rods connected by silver orbs from front to back in the triangle. And it bothered me. And what started bothering me at this point was every experience that I had was different than what everybody else was having. And that really pissed me off, because, I wasn't seeing the same thing. And I was getting frustrated because I was literally sitting on my laptop computer. I'd fall asleep at night in bed with my laptop on my lap, because I would literally be looking anywhere I could online to try and find something on black triangles to figure out what it was that I saw. And not one single report that I read on a black triangle had anything to do with what I had seen. And as the experiences continued, this kept happening more and more and more. So into 2014, in March of 2014, and now as I've had spaced out radio, I know a lot of other people have had this experience as well, where I'd never been taken before. I had never been, experienced any type of ET contact or anything like that. But all of a sudden, I remember going to bed, falling asleep like I normally do with my laptop on my. This time, I remember to take my laptop off and put it on the floor below me, and I went to bed. And the next thing I know, I wake up and I am in a bright white room. I know there are walls, even though I can't see them. It is extremely bright white light, but I'm not squinting. And I hear this voice coming from above and behind me. And it says, Dave, we no longer want you watching any television shows, reading any books, going on any forums, or going on any paranormal tours or anything along those lines. However, we give you permission to watch YouTube videos. And I said, hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out what is going on with me, and you're taking everything away, but you'll allow me to watch YouTube videos. I don't understand. The voice said, the answer is simple. You will be able to tell what is real and what is fake. And then I woke up like I normally would in the morning, thinking, well, that's a new experience. Pascal, what's going on with this? Right? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, sounds like you got visited. And I'm like, apparently. But I've learned now, and not many other people, I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 other people have had that same white room experience. And so thought nothing of it. 3 weeks goes by, and this takes us to April 10th, 2014. And I'm working that day, and my wife is over at the farm having tea. It's like 9:00 at night. And I'm driving, and I worked 45 minutes out of town, and I'm driving home. And as I'm driving home, I start getting a migraine, pull into the farm, go inside. They're all sitting around having tea. And I go sit on the couch and close my eyes. And I said, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to stay because I'm having this migraine. I'm going to have to go home and have a hot shower with the lights off and a washcloth over my eyes and pop as many Advil as I could possibly take. And so my partner says, do you want to go home now? And I'm like, no, let's hang out. I said, I just got here and you want to have some time to have some tea? I said, not a problem. I'll just sit here with my eyes closed. And that's when I realized that it wasn't really a migraine that I was having. It was actually shapes pulsating in my head. So the first one started off as a square that was just absolutely painful right in the front of my face. It moved over to the right side of my head, which was a circle, and then was a triangle, and then a circle on the left side. And as soon as the pain subsided, I had an absolute anxiety attack that I needed to go outside. So I ended up going outside with the lady of the house. And right before that, though, I said to my partner, I said, I need to go outside right now. There's something out there. I need to get out there. And she's like, can I come with you? I'm like, no, you have to stay in with our son. And so the lady of the house, who I don't really talk about much anymore, because she was actually a witch and she cursed me. And that's ever since then, I haven't been able to summon UFOs, but that's a whole different story whatsoever. Her and I, she says to her husband, Dave, she goes, Dave is picking something up. We need to go outside right now. I looked dead pinned at her and I said, he can't come. He's not invited. Why would I tell somebody that they're not invited on their own property? So she gets her shoes on, I get my shoes on, and we go outside. We walk about 50 feet behind the house, and there's this old horse fence. And like I said earlier, their property is 10 acres. The neighbors was 6.5. And in between the two properties, there were these giant trees that were probably 50, 60, 70 feet tall. And we go out to this horse fence, and it was one of those nights, those Vancouver lower mainland type nights where it's very low cloud, it's very misty and wet and damp out. And here we are in the low cloud, misty and damp, and you could feel that there was something there. So she goes, well, they called you outside. Why don't you check it on out? So I said, out of God's peace, love, and light, you called us outside. Can you please show us where you are? And 150 yards away, right from the ground, the entire tree line between the two properties lit up like a Christmas tree in the brightest white light I have ever seen. Once again, there was no, it looked like the bright white light from the room. There was no squinting. There was no anything. And after about 30 seconds, the white light went off. And I'm like, oh my God. She's just like, well, do it again. Do it again. I said, if you are of alien descent out of God's peace, love, and light, can you turn your lights back on? Boom, lights come back on. This time they're wider through the trees. It's brighter. And I started seeing something, because I'm trying to get a look at this, but there's this tree line that is blocking everything. So I see something blue, and I move to my right about 15, 20 feet to try and get a view through the pictures. That's where I saw this blue cylinder standing vertically. Now, the trees being my ruler, knowing the trees were about 50, 60, 70 feet tall, this blue cylinder was going up about halfway up on the trees, even though it was behind the trees. And at the bottom of this blue cylinder, there was this black cloud that was rotating counterclockwise, and it would spin halfway up, and then it would spin its way back down. The white light seemed to be emanating from all around this blue cylinder, but not touching it. It was the strangest thing. And, the journalistic skeptic in me, I'm thinking, okay, I know Canadian Tire sells these 100,000 candle watt flashlights. I'm listening for voices. There's no voices. There's no movement of the flashlights. There's no way they could hear me from 150 yards away saying, can you please turn your lights off, at the same volume I'm talking to you? Okay. I'm going through everything and I can to try and make logical sense of this, and there is no logic. So the lights go off the second time, and my friend says, let's go up there. And I said, you ain't going anywhere. No way. You're not going anywhere close to that. We're staying right here. And she's like, I'm going. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, we don't know what the hell this is. This is not cool. This is all of a sudden reality, like life-changing reality. 150 yards away, there is something on the ground, aliens or whatever it may be. Okay, you're staying right here with me. I said, because I'm not going back in the house and telling your hubby that, oh, by the way, you're gone. That's just not going to work for me. Not going to fly. Because guess what? When the police are called, they're not coming to anybody but me. Right? That's not cool. So she stays with me, and she goes, well, see if they'll turn their lights on once again. So I said, just so I know I'm not crazy, can you please, out of God's peace, love, and light, can you please turn your lights on one final time? Boom, lights come back on, just as bright. There's the blue cylinder. There's the black cloud going halfway up. And then after about 30 seconds, the lights went off. But then they went on. And then they went off. Then they went on. Then they went off. And this continued about 8, 9, 10 times. And it reminded me of the power-ups that were happening above my house all the time. That these power-ups, it was showing me that those power-ups that we were above my house were not iridium flares or shining of tinfoil, space foil off the satellite, but it was actually them saying, hey, we're here, we're waiting. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is incredible. So 5 days later, I haven't slept. I happen to have it was a Wednesday, and I happen to have the Wednesday off. And the night before, Jolene gets a phone call saying that we were invited over for tea to meet this young lady named Samantha Mowat, who is a lifelong ET contactee. And they wanted to meet us because of what had just happened a few nights previous. So here I am, like, okay. So we get to the house, and it's all this small chitter. Hi, how you doing? And here's Dave. And my anxiety, I'm pacing all around, right? And, do you want tea, Dave? No, I'm fine. I'll just grab a glass of water, iced tea, or whatever it was. And I couldn't even sit down because I haven't slept in 5 days. All right. And so Samantha, out of the blue, about 20 minutes after meeting her, says, you want to go outside, don't you? I'm like, yeah. She goes, would you mind if I came with you so you could show me where this craft was? So I'm like, sure. So it was a beautiful spring, sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, about 21, 22 degrees Celsius. So that's about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And her and I walk out the front of the house. We go behind the house. We walk into the back field. And I'm showing her from my friend's back field where this craft was sitting, or the lights were sitting. And Samantha, being very intuitive, she starts picking up on it immediately, on the energy of it. And so here's another important fact. The farm had 2 dogs, 2 big dogs. And I used to bring my 2 dogs over to the farm to run around. So there were 4 dogs with us. And the dogs are all running around all over the property around us, following us. Hey, guys, what are you doing? Hey, we're going to tag along. And so, whatever. And Samantha all of a sudden comes really, really close to me, right in the middle of the field. And she goes, hey, Dave, what do you think about going into the forest? And I'm like, okay, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I said, and I knew. I don't know why. I just knew. And I went, okay. And she goes, we're probably going to see something, right? And I went, yep. And she goes, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I just had a UFO land on the ground 5 days ago. What the hell? Let's just go. She goes, okay. She goes, but from what I know, ETs don't like dogs. So we said, okay, well, should we take the dogs back? There's this big debate about the dogs. And we're like, well, let's just wander off and see what the dogs do. So, of course, the dogs run way ahead of us, seeing the direction we're walking. All 4 dogs run way ahead of us. And the dogs are all of a sudden standing at the fence line to go into the trees, into the forest. And so we're walking closer. We get about 20 feet from the dogs. All 4 dogs run into the forest. And we're like, well, this may not work. And who knows what's going to go on. And she starts asking me about ETs and what do I know about them? And I'm like, I know nothing. I saw fire in the sky. And it just doesn't seem to work that way. And we get about 50 yards in, and Samantha stops. And she starts looking around, and she's like, Dave, where are the dogs? All 4 dogs were gone. Don't know where they went. 4 dogs gone. Now, 2 of them are German Shepherd crosses. One's a Lab Rhodesian Ridgeback cross. And then I have my little Chihuahua Dachshund. Okay. All 4 dogs gone. 3 big ones, 1 little one. Cannot find them. Okay. So, being stupid people that we are, because, in a horror movie, it's always the white people who keep going. We keep going. We get about another 50 yards into the forest. Samantha stops me again. She moves within about 12 to 18 inches from my face. And Samantha, if you've never seen her, she's this beautiful, small, little red-headed pixie who's just gorgeous. And she stops me from about 18 inches away, and she goes, and she kind of puts her arm up on mine, and she goes, Dave, I don't want you to be afraid, but I want you to look that way. And she points north, and she goes, I want you to tell me what you see. So I'm facing Samantha like this. I turn like this and look north. And I took a deep breath and I said, Samantha, what the F is that? Samantha, what the F is that? What the F is that, Samantha? Samantha, what the F is that? Because 200 feet away from me, staring right back at me, was a 10 to 12 foot extraterrestrial, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. And there it is. It was creamy brown, light brown in color, almost like if you put too much cream in your coffee. I saw the head. I did not see the arms. I did not see the legs. Samantha, what the F is that? And there it was. And I went, oh my God. And during this time, I always like to preface this. I was scared shitless, but I wasn't scared for my safety or Samantha's safety. I was scared because I'm 40 years old and my entire paradigm of life has now shifted. Look, somebody can have a dream about UFOs or alien ET abduction or something along those lines, but we could never tell if it's a dream or if it's reality inside of a dream. You know what I'm saying? Most experiencers and abductees happens at night. They go to bed, and the next thing they know, they're allegedly woken up and taken on craft. We don't know if that's a dream, a very vivid dream, or if it's actually happening. This is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I am wide awake like I'm talking to you guys right now. And there is a 12-foot extraterrestrial standing 200 feet away from me, staring back. Okay, that's what scared me, because you know what? I grew up, I'm not a religious guy, but I grew up in a strong belief of God, that God is good, the devil is bad. If you're good, you go up. If you're bad, you go to hell. All right, so try and treat everybody good. Never did my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my hockey coaches, my school teachers, anybody whom I loved and respected, ever tell me, what the hell do you do when you are face to face with an alien in the middle of the day, in the middle of a forest?
Dave, before you go on too further, I know I was shocked. I've heard parts of the story before. I didn't realize how tall this being was. I've never heard you describe. Well, did you get a feeling that it was a male being, or could you tell? I know you said you were afraid. Was it?
Yeah, I think the dominant factor of it all, you always tend to lean towards it being male, but I really don't know.
Right. And was its head like a classic alien shape, or was it a smaller
Round.
head?
Just it was round. It was very bulbous. I saw the neck. It was the head, and then the neck kind of protruded out. You know how street lights, they kind of have that protrusion from the light.
Right.
That's what it looked like. Very thin body. Like I said, I didn't see any arms or any legs.
Right. How about facial features? Did it seem to have like a profile at all, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing eyes. I don't recall seeing a nose, a mouth. I do recall it changing color. It went from a very light tan color, almost to like a quarter horse type brown.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I recall. But there's a lot about it that I don't remember. Not that I don't remember, but I think I was too traumatized to remember.
Right.
Because as all of this is going on, Samantha is now telepathically communicating with a second being that's right there, that she can see, and I can't take my eyes off of this thing. Right. So this second being, which was about a 6 foot tan colored gray, says to Samantha, you're more than willing to come over here and say hello. We're not here to take you. We're not here to harm you. However, we have concerns about the man's health.
You being the man.
Well, I better be, because it's only Samantha and I there, right? But what screwed me up about that was, once again, I saw fire in the sky. I couldn't finish communion. I saw what happened to Travis Walton. At least I thought in that point, I didn't realize how much of Hollywood had taken over that movie. Okay. And so I really did not want to go. Samantha then starts, I said, no, we're not going. And she's like, well, I'm going. You can stay here. And I said, look here, lady, I don't know you from anything, but I am not walking back 300 yards, 400 yards alone back to the house alone because they decide to take you. I said, I'm a dead man with police if that happens. Right? I said, you are not literally man card, back in the day, you could call a man card. And I was like, you are staying here with me. Like, I was literally, if she'd have walked down that trail, I was literally going to be there to grab her, pick her up, throw her over my shoulder, and get the hell out of there.
Did you know what the message was from them, that they wanted you to go over and say howdy?
No. At that point, I was freaking out so bad internally, just because I didn't know what to do. When you have a traumatic experience, like I've never had a gun pulled on me before. I've never, seen a lot of bad stuff happen. Okay. I've never had a lot of trauma around me. I've been very lucky in my life that way.
You got divorced though.
Yeah. But
I've been there.
Yeah.
That counts. That counts.
But the whole point that I'm getting at is this was an alternate reality, excuse me, that I wasn't used to. There was this new paradigm that went from, lumber on the ground to a 300-story skyscraper in a matter of seconds. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know what other analogy I could use, and Samantha thankfully understood my fear and she stayed with me. And we stood there and watched them for about 15 minutes. I never saw the second one at all. I didn't even know the second one was there. I thought originally she was communicating with the one I was looking at. And then all of a sudden, and this is where it gets interesting, because I've said this to a couple of scientists. And most recently, I said this to Brandon Fugel when I talked to him off the air, when I interviewed him on Spaced Out Radio. I said, you know how they escaped, don't you? And he goes, how? I said, they'll lead you to believe there's something happening in a different area. And when you go to that area, you feel the anticipation that something is going to happen. And after a number of minutes, you realize that nothing's going to happen. And when you go back to the original spot, they're gone. And that's exactly what happened here.
So
we got called.
You were having a stare down with this thing for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow.
15, 20 minutes, something like that.
I always like to ask people when they see beings, did they have any clothes on?
No.
Sex organs?
No, we didn't see any.
Okay. Go ahead. Continue.
So we go to this, we walk to once again, we're called to a different part of the forest. We walk over there. We're there searching around for about 10, 15 minutes, see nothing. You'd swear you see things out of the corner of your eyes because they've put in your head, you're going to see more. Go over there to see some more. Then you get there and there's nothing there. So we go back to the original spot. They're now gone. We start making our way back to the house. We get probably within 50 yards of the entry to the farm. And when we get that close, all 4 dogs come running out to greet us.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Entertaining.
So what does Samantha say about all this? What did she tell you in terms of what she thought was going on?
Well, it's funny because this part of the conversation she does not recall ever having. But recently, as in the last number of months, we've talked about this, and it now makes sense to her. When we came out of the forest, we stopped in the farmyard, and she goes, "Dave, have you ever been taken by ETs?" I said, "No." She goes, "Well, not that you know of." I said, "Not that I know of. No, I don't think so." She goes, "Well, just be prepared because it's likely now that you're going to have an experience, and if you do go, don't worry about it. Just let them do their thing and everything will be fine. It's going to seem like it hurts, but sometimes it doesn't hurt and it'll be fine." "Oh, thank you. Thank you." Walk back to the house, nothing happens. And, tell them what we saw and everything is good. Right. So, yeah.
I
And
have
then later, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say before we get too far ahead of us, you mentioned remembering the white room before, and that you couldn't make out any walls or doorways or discern anything like that. Were you standing in this room, or were you sitting, or was there that dental
I was standing.
You were standing? Okay.
Yeah.
And Grant, what were you about to say?
No, I want to hear the next part of the story. So you do get taken. So go to that part of the story.
Okay. So September 27th, which is kind of slowly the beginning of that, I don't even realize the coming out party of Spaced Out Radio. I do I emceed a UFO conference in Vancouver put on by Johnny Enoch, and Samantha was speaking, and John had asked me if I would MC the event, which I did graciously. And I still thank him for that opportunity. And so nothing had happened up to that point, nothing really fun, nothing interesting, no real UFOs. And September 30th came along, and there was a lot of weird, dramatic type energy in my house. And I felt the need that I needed to channel. There was a message trying to come through, and that I needed to channel this message. And so my partner and I set our lawn chairs up on the patio. It's a nice, warm fall night. Still, in the lower mainland, it could still be like 85 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, 32, 33 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius, pardon me. Whatever it is, you know what I'm trying to translate here. And so I set up the lawn chairs. We're about 3 feet apart, not very far. And I start kind of meditating. And for people who channel, you'll understand that a lot of times you see more with your eyes closed than what you do when they're open. And so right behind my partner's chair, I see this little gray dude kind of peering out. And he kind of looked like a mixture of E.T. and a gray. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?" And he quickly dashed back and left. Little did I know that was just an introduction, because that night I go to bed like nothing had ever happened. And I wake up and I'm lying on my stomach. I pick up my head. Turn my head to the right, and it's all blackness, but I see some light coming from behind me. And I turn my head the other way, and I look behind me, and there's 3 of these little gray dudes looking exactly like this guy. They were wearing silverish black outfits. I could see their hands and their heads. And I remember thinking to myself, holy shit, I've been taken. And so I put my head back down, and my head is in this, like, when you're lying on a massage table, you got that donut there that you kind of put your head in so you can breathe through. So I put my head through that, and I know it's a metal table, but it's comfortable. It doesn't feel cold. It doesn't feel hard. And how I woke up was I felt the feeling of little children's fingers on the top of my head like this. And so now I'm going to preface this. When I tell this story, I get right there. I get a little pulsation that starts going vroom, 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 vroom. Oh, you're talking about me. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Okay. So
I'm getting the twitchies.
so
I'm like, ugh.
I put my head back down, and then I feel the first guy come over, and I'm like, oh, Samantha knew this was going to happen. How did she know? And I'm all that, and then I felt the knife blade go right across the back of my head, right here, and I went, oh, that did not feel good, you know. And then they start pulling my skin towards my forehead. So I got a guy, as I'm laying on the table, my arms are kind of to my side, and I feel this happening. And I know there's a guy like right by my shoulder here. Okay. And he's pulling, and I'm like, oh, this does not feel good. Samantha said this was supposed to be fun, and it's not fun right now. And then I hear the saw. And I don't know how to explain it, but it just sounded like a saw, like a power saw. And I felt this that go into the back of my head. And I'm like, oh, God, this ain't good. And I just start screaming. And all of a sudden I hear Samantha's voice in my head. Don't worry, Dave. It doesn't hurt. And all of a sudden, there was something else there. I just can't remember. And all of a sudden, everything started tickling. And all the pain went away. And so here they are. I feel the second guy so you got the guy here who's holding the flap of my skin over here. I know there's one beside him because I could feel him leaning over me. And he's trying to get his fingers into where they just cut. And the third guy's trying to shove something in there. I feel all this going on. And then I had to pee. Lori and Fenton, every time I tell this story and she hears this story, she always says one thing. She goes, Dave, you know how I know this story is true? I said, how? She goes, because no one would ever admit to having to go pee on a craft while being taken. So here I am facing that donut. They're cutting me open, trying to implant me or something. And I can feel my head right now. It's going wacky. And I start yelling at them through this thing. I said, guys, you got to hurry up here. I got to piss like a racehorse. And I don't want to piss all over myself here. You got to hurry up and get me back. Get me back. I got to pee, guys. I'm not pissing on this table. I'm not going to piss all over myself. You got to hurry up. And I kept yelling this, and I got to pee. Next thing I know, they're hustling and bustling around like, oh shit, he's awake and all this kind of stuff. And next thing I know, I wake up, I'm lying on top of my bed at home. My face is buried in my pillow, and I never sleep on my stomach. I'm on the side sleeper. Okay, I don't even sleep on my back. I always sleep on my side. But here I am on top of the covers, just my boxer shorts, face buried in the pillow that I shouldn't even be able to breathe. I jump up. My head is feeling like I just pounded, an entire bottle of tequila. And I got my head like this. I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, that hurts. Run to the bathroom. I stood there for about 4.5, 5 minutes with the best piss of my life, thanks to the aliens. Right? And I went to bed, and I'm still holding my head. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? I don't recall. Oh my God, aliens. And that was my first time I was taken that I know of.
Wow. And just to be clear, like, you checked out your head, you did that whole thing, like there was nothing there, like half your skull.
There was a little bit of a bump there for a while. I had a few people feel it. They could feel the difference. I had some very intuitive people who have had ET contact before, kind of like, move their hand over it. They could feel the vibration coming from it. My head was sore for a couple of days. Yeah. Yeah.
And you said you heard Samantha's voice. Did you hear any other kind of contact as that was going on?
Nothing.
Well, I can completely understand why they would choose her voice to come to you in that moment. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was just, from yourself. But I listened to Samantha's voice, and she sounds to me like what every Alexa and computer and all this she sounds to me like what AI will sound like in the future.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm like, her voice is perfect.
Very much so. Very
Oh,
much.
so should we take another break, or should we
Yeah,
continue on
let's
through?
let's take a break, and then I got a question.
Okay,
Sure.
I'm pausing now. Boom. And we're back. And I am
So Dave,
dumbfounded.
yeah, Dave, I want to ask you, like you talked about all these experiences. So you got, Sasquatch and channeling and all this stuff. What's your worldview? How does all this stuff fit together? What do you think's really going on?
Well, at first, I really didn't understand what all of these experiences were. And the more I started delving into this field, the more I started hearing this comment that I was fast tracked. Okay. So I started kind of asking, well, what does that actually mean? For a lot of people out there these days, they are given a plethora of experiences that I strongly believe that whatever power is above doing this gives you only as much as you can handle. And they made me run the gamut. I think in the end, it was to all start the radio show and kind of get the message out there, because one of the things that I was lost about was I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know anybody in this field. I didn't know outside of the guy with the weird eyebrows and the deep voice and the big beard that was on every documentary. I didn't know who Stanton Friedman was outside of the eyebrows, and I know he scared me, and and Whitley Strieber, and I needed to learn more. And the one thing that I have learned through all of this, and the top researchers, in my opinion, are the only ones who are looking into this. But there is really this invisible thread, in my opinion, that ties all of this together. What that is, I don't know. But for some reason, it all ties together, whether it's paranormal experiences, cryptid experiences, UFOs, consciousness, psychic intuition. It all comes from the same place. And because we are in a society these days that has to break everything down to its most finite form, we are not even looking at this as even a possibility. It's only the real extreme people who've been doing this a long time who have been able to figure out this is all tied together. How? We don't know. I'm sure there may be somebody who are way ahead of me in regards to trying to figure that out. But the more I look into this, the more you hear the stories of people who see a UFO, and the next thing they know, they're seeing ghosts in their house, or they're seeing aliens, or they walk into a forest and are finding Bigfoot tracks, or they become intuitive immediately and they've never been intuitive before. That's the realm that I kind of go by. A lot of people will say that I'm wrong, and that's fine. They're allowed to say that I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Because when I listen to people, and I'll use you as an example, Grant, you open up every door that is in front of you. You open up and you investigate it. People like David Weatherly, Timothy Renner, Joshua Cutchin, Ross Allison, John Tenney. They are all looking for this invisible thread. Now, it's not about, in my opinion, none of this has to do with the government or what the government knows or anything along those lines. Okay, this is one of those things that I think that we're not supposed to know about, and very few are actually taking the time to realize that this is a phenomena that is all tied together, and we just don't know how it is.
Your story is pretty good in terms of showing that that's true. I mean, because you had all the different experiences, you went from one to the other, and I would agree with you that there's something, whatever it is, I always call it the intelligence. There's something behind it, and it's probably 1,000 times more complex than we could ever imagine.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I agree with that as well. It took me 2 decades to kind of smush it together that it actually was connected, instead of coming up with the left brain excuses for it all to just make sense or not make sense and then just blow it off. So it was kind of mind opening to me for that door to open, to realize that experiences, and I guess I should pose this to you now that you've dove in. I know personally I found out that where I thought my experiences began with a UFO sighting, I was wrong, and now that I've dug deeper, it goes back to virtually the earliest I can remember, if not before. Did you have an experience like that where you think it maybe started more in your childhood, or this was gifted to you as an adult?
This was definitely gifted to me as an adult.
Mhm.
I had always believed in this stuff. I don't know why, but I always believed that there was something more out there. I remember sitting around the campfires, you go camping with your buddies and you're like, and I would say to them, I want to see 3 things before I die. I want to see a ghost, I want to see a UFO, and I want to see Sasquatch. And I've seen all 3. The problem that you have, at least for me, is every 30-second experience that I have, and most don't even last that long for anybody, but for every experience I have, it opens the door to about 1,000 questions or more. And the hard part about it is never getting the answers to those questions and having to be satisfied with the fact that you're not going to get those answers. And that's the hard part, Nicole. And that's also the satisfying part. And trust me, I'm not satisfied, but I understand. And I've learned a lot that there are things that I'm never going to know. Okay. I'll never know about why Carl showed up at my window. I'll never know about, what did that Sasquatch look like, because I never saw its face. I'll never know what that black triangle was that flew over us with the orange rods connecting to the silver orbs. I'll never know. Okay. But for every experience, you have to be thankful that you were given that opportunity to have that experience, because not a lot of people have, and not a lot of people will. So you have to try and figure out, what am I doing with this? And that's why I do a nightly show, is because I know I'm not the only one. I'm just the one with a big mouth that can talk to people about it. And I know how to speak on a microphone. That's all.
Have you ever considered regression to try to pull back some of this material?
I tried regression once, and my guides blocked it. They wouldn't let me go back. Would I try it again? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would. I want to know. I want to know.
Who do you understand as your guides to be? Who do you understand your guides to be?
I know I have 3 that I've met. My guide that is always with me, his name, he goes by Jordan. I never see him. He's always like right here in my peripheral vision when I call on him. And he's got this surfer dude type attitude, like, hey man, what's going on? Like, yeah, you want to do that? I'll do that. Oh, you need some protection here? Sure. Yeah, not a problem, man. When I screw up, or when I start getting into some serious stuff, I have this beautiful young lady, Sophelia, I think her name is. And she is, I always see her, she almost looks like a librarian. Okay. She's always got her hair pulled back. She's always wearing like a dark suit with like a black dress with a black dress coat and a white blouse. And she's got thick horn rim glasses like that. And when it's like, she's like the disciplinarian of me. And so when I screw up on a spiritual angle, that's when she comes forward. And then I have this guy, I've only seen him twice. I believe his name is Cephalus. And he is like a wizard. He looks like Merlin with the long white beard and the cloak and everything. And he talks kind of like, you know, kind of like almost like in riddle type form. And I've only ever met him twice, but I know those are three. There could be more. I haven't met him yet.
Right. Fascinating. So do these guides, do they come when you call them, or are they there when you need them, or are they kind of
Jordan-
pesky to where they just show up?
Jordan is there all the time. Jordan is there all the time. I remember a little fun story. One of the guys who used to work with the show, a guy named Eric, he lived in North Carolina, and he didn't believe any of the pendulum stuff. And so we were kind of doing this experiment on Skype. He had his pendulum and I had my pendulum. And Eric's like, you know, I don't believe that this is working. You know, I mean, you know, we were trying to contact with Jordan and get Jordan to answer and get his pendulum and my pendulum to move in synchronicity via Skype. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. It could be my fingers. It could be the energy, because he's a man of science. And I just kind of said, Jordan, do me a favor. Stop Eric's pendulum right now. And Eric's pendulum went doop, doop, doop. And Eric's eyes went like this. And he's like, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah, dude. He goes, that's impossible. He goes, if this just didn't happen with my own eyes, that is impossible. And don't know how. Oh, pardon me. I have one other guide.
Ooh, a fourth.
I have one other guide, and I only talk to him through pendulum. So, where's my pendulums here? Hold on.
We're going to get a demo here. Good.
See if they'll talk.
Well, you need to get Dest on. She can do a pendulum like you can't believe.
Well,
that makes me think all three of us need to go on with you, Grant. Me, Desta, Sinead. We just need to all go on SOR. Dave can chat us all up.
Okay, I'll let you guys choose which one.
Ooh. Grant's saying this one. Oh, okay. Blue crystal spiky one.
All right. All right. Jordan, are you here? So that is a yes. Jordan, can you show a no? Stop that and show a no.
So the back and forth is a no, and a circle.
Back and forth is a no. Can you turn that into a yes? Can you turn that into a yes, please?
Thank you, Jordan.
You. Can you stop the pendulum? Can you stop the pendulum? Okay, number 2, are you around? No? Can you come say hello? No, you'll see that he goes the opposite direction. Can you show us a yes, please, number 2?
Wow.
Thank you. Can you stop the pendulum? Stop it, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Nicole, you got a question? Ask some questions.
I think I have a lot of questions now, but
You want me to keep the pendulum going?
Yeah.
no, well, I don't know if we can start a whole hour of that. I don't.
Jordan, will you answer any questions of Nicole's?
Yeah. There you go.
All
This
right.
is your chance, Nicole.
Okay, I guess these things just pop in your head, right? Does Jordan know any of my guides?
You will notice that Jordan will answer before you even finish your question. So the answer right there is no.
He said no. All right. Grant, do you have any questions for Jordan?
I'm drawing a blank.
Yes, you do have one, Grant.
I do have a question. Let me think.
He's already given you the answer.
Is Dave's show going to work out the way he wants it to? There you go.
I think we're getting a yes.
Is Nicole going to be a famous broadcaster? There you go. Uh-oh.
It froze on me. It's saying no.
Oh, there you go. What's your mission then? Ask him.
Oh, you can only answer yes or no, correct? Right. Dave, you got the cutest look on your face right now.
Has your guide been on Earth? Your main guide? Is he incarnated?
No.
There you go.
Nice.
Are the Vancouver Canucks going to win the Stanley Cup ever? Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
It may not be in my lifetime, but
Oh, I guess I could ask if the Cubs are going to win another World Series. So, oh,
He doesn't
he
know who the
doesn't
Cubs
know.
are. He doesn't know who the Cubs are.
Doug doesn't follow baseball. Okay. I would like to hear the Carl story. That's what I would like to hear.
thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.
I think I called him Doug. He might be mad at me.
No, you didn't call him Doug.
Okay.
So those are my pendulums. I don't play with them as much as I probably should.
Yeah, why isn't the pendulum questions a part of SOR?
Could be a eventual YouTube thing.
Might be. I'm thinking a YouTube break. This could be fun.
Oh, maybe. Let's see here. Carl. Okay. So Carl came out. When did Carl come out?
Because Carl seems like
April.
a lot of fun. If I'm remembering right, he seems to have a big personality.
Yeah. I've only had interaction with Carl twice. Carl. So for people who don't know and are listening to this for the first time, Carl's an alien, gray. And April 20th, yes, 420, go figure. No, I don't smoke pot. April 20th, 2015, I was interviewing a gentleman named Harvey Kraft about Buddha of all topics. And the weird part about it is I am someone where I always have my outdoor lights on at night. And for some reason, the 3 nights previous, including the night Carl showed up, I had not turned my outside lights on. And I don't know why, but I remember that night I was like, I got to turn the outside lights on. And then I kind of forgot to do so. So I go into the show, and I've always had a house. It doesn't matter where I am now or my old house where this incident took place. I always have a house where everybody is invited. My old house, our best friends had keys. They all had access to our garage door code. So if they wanted to come in, they could come on in. Didn't really matter. It could be 7 o'clock in the morning, could be 10 o'clock at night. So here I am interviewing Harvey, and my old studio was a converted bedroom beside my front door, and the walls weren't very thick. And I had a rancher style home that, when you look at it, you got the big bay window, and then there's the door, and then you got the bedroom, and then you have the garage. And so I was in that bedroom, and when I was broadcasting, I always had the blinds open, and it was dark out, and Harvey starts talking, and about 15 minutes into the show, I see something move out of the corner of my eye out the window to my left. And as Harvey is talking, I start thinking, oh God, like somebody's showing up. They forget I have the radio show, because the radio show at that time was only 6 months old. And they're going to come to the front door. They're going to knock, and the dogs are going to start barking. And my little Chihuahua dachshund, God bless her soul. But I mean, a crosswind was 20 minutes worth of barking. So imagine when somebody's at the door, right? And that's just not going to make for great radio with dogs barking in the back. And I feel my anxiety building up about this. Well, after a couple of minutes, I realized that nobody has knocked at the door, and the dogs still haven't barked. So I take my chair, I put my microphone on mute, I swivel my chair like this, and I jump back, freaked out, because on the other side of the window, there was an alien gray head staring back at me. Large, bulbous head, big black eyes. It was the eyes that I focused in on first. And I jumped back, kind of screamed. Harvey's talking in my headphones because he doesn't know what's going on. My microphone's on mute. I jump up, and the window's only 2 feet away, 3 feet away. And I jump up, I go to the window, all in a split second, and there's nothing there. If it was a human, I would have seen somebody running away. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing there. But I will never forget that. So I call up after I put my microphone, take it off of mute. I said, Harvey, weird thing just happened. There was just somebody standing at my window, and now they're gone. And I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to tell him it was an alien at that point. Text my partner, say, alien at window, get in here now. So she is very, it's a word I'm looking for, empathic. Mm-hmm. So she comes into the office, her hands are immediately burning. And she immediately is like, whoa, this is odd. So she starts running around the house with a bunch of sage and Palo Santo wood, sealing up the house, spiritually. And I called up after the show. I called up our Keith Andrews, who I was just getting to know at that time, and has turned into one of my best friends in this field. And I said, Keith, I had a visitor, and I had an alien. Keith has never been to my house. Still to this day, he's never been to my house. And he goes, your house is on a hill. And he goes, there's a little hill between your neighbor's house and yours. And that's all. And there's only about 15, 20 feet in between your houses, correct? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, that's where his ship was parked. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, you just got him in a whole lot of trouble, Keith says. And I'm like, why? He goes, because he wasn't supposed to stop. I said, well, why would he come see me? He goes, Dave, what are you putting out to the universe on a nightly basis? He goes, of course they're going to be able to hear your signal of you doing your radio show. And it probably caught his attention. And that's why he came down to see who you are. So after a few months of telling this story, figured he needed a name. So I named him Carl.
Alien Carl.
What else am I supposed to name him?
I'm glad you differentiate on the show between human Carl and alien Carl, because they both do pop in and out. They're not around all the time. Well,
human Carl is a long-time listener, and he's a Vietnam veteran, and God bless him for surviving and doing what he had to do during a very tough time in the world. And so we love our human Carl around our chat room on Spaced Out Radio. We just don't want anybody to confuse him with alien Carl. you know, so we make the designation of calling Carl the human Carl, so that way people don't get it confused.
Can I ask you a little bit about your show now?
You ask anything you want.
You ever interview Stanton?
I interviewed Stanton twice.
Okay.
Can I tell you my funny Stanton story?
Sure.
Okay, because I think every interview Stanton did is always the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, his lectures are all the same too. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Grant, when I was in radio, I only ever froze twice in an interview. Number one was with BC Lions legendary kicker Louis Pasaglia.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and that was the first big name interview I ever did.
Wow.
And I froze, and my mind went blank. And actually, it happened 3 times. The second time it happened was with Don Cherry at the in Canada. They have a junior hockey game. It used to be called Team Cherry versus Team Orr. Yeah. So I got to meet Bobby Orr too, by the way.
Wow. So you got to interview Mr. Cherry?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was at the Pacific Coliseum underground getting ready for the player warm-ups, and this was during the game day skate, and I come around this corner, and who do I walk into? Coming through the door right into me is Don Cherry.
Wow.
And I was kind of like, wow.
Did he have his outfit on? His tie? And all that?
No, he had a ball cap on. He was in a tracksuit.
Okay.
And I just went like, there's certain people that I would never ever called by their first name. And I called him Mr. Cherry, and he's like, okay, just call me Don. I'm like, okay, Mr. Cherry. Right. And the third time was Wayne Gretzky.
Wow.
I was literally shoulder to shoulder with him in a media scrum, and he turned and looked at me, and I had this question that I wanted to ask about Team Canada. And he turned and looked at me, caught me off guard, and I froze. And I went, oh, go to someone else. Go to someone else. I had nothing. But the first time I interviewed Stanton, it wasn't live, it was recorded. And I was only doing 2-hour interviews back then. And Stanton, I start the interview and I'm nervous because, I mean, it's Stanton Friedman. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's the godfather of all of this. And so I stumble through my intro, and it's just terrible. And I finally stop because I know I have to catch my breath. And I said, Mr. Friedman, I'm sorry. I just stopped the recording for a second, but I got to get this out. I'm like, you're Stanton fucking Friedman. Holy shit, you're Stanton fucking Friedman. And he is killing himself laughing on the phone. And he goes in that gruff voice, well, Dave, you know, I'm just like you. I put my pants on one leg at a time. You know, and I just laughed, and you know what? It cut the tension, and I apologize for swearing on your channel there.
No problem.
But I have to tell the story that way because that's the only way it works. And so we ended up doing a 2-hour interview, and I interviewed him a couple more times about ufology. And last time I got to interview him was about the Flatwoods Monster and the 50th anniversary of that. And so I remember the day he died, I think, Grant, you jumped on and we did a quick 6-person panel. We had Peter Davenport, we had Steve Bassett, yourself, and a couple of others who jumped on and quickly did a Stanton Friedman special on May 13th. I believe it was May 13th. Yeah. Of last year, or of 2018. And you know, God bless him. I wish he was still alive right now, because I think there's never a good time for anything. Okay. But I think Stanton Friedman to this day, if he was still alive, would be the voice of reason we need to put groups and people in their place, because it seemed like after Stanton passed away, there was this giant free for all on information because there was no grand poobah to keep things in control and perspective. And what we've seen with Stanton's passing, the popularity and the questioning of the To the Stars Academy and their motif, along with a lot of other things that have gone on, whether it's Richard Dolan, who I think has stepped into that role a little bit, even though those are, he's probably a size 6 and a size 15 size Stanton shoe. I don't think that I think Stanton left a giant hole in this field, along with Jim Mars, but more so Stanton, that hasn't been filled. And nobody has really stepped up to the plate to grab a hold of ufology and give it a good shaking like Stanton could. And I don't think that'll ever happen again.
I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if I told it on your show, but you talked about Stanton saying he put his pants on one leg at a time. I only had one real long conversation, or two conversations. Both happened basically within one day of each other. We were lecturing at the alien cosmic thing up in the mountains, up in north of LA, and we got there, and it's a smaller conference, and I always think this is just a bizarre story because I had this conversation with Stan during the event, and between events we had this long conversation, and I never really talked to him, even though I'd known him since the 1970s. And then the next morning he had just had cataract surgery. This is January, he died in May, so it was only a couple months before he died. And he had this cataract surgery. He couldn't see very well. We were sort of helping him around and stuff like that. And the guy said to us that the guy who's running the conference said, this is a fantastic place, and you got to go to the Teddy Bear restaurant. If you're here, it's the most famous restaurant in town. It's a ski resort thing. We said, fantastic. So the next morning, Pope was there. There's a bunch of people there, and everybody was gone. There's just me and Stan outside the hotel, this little motel. We're standing there, and so Stan says, where's everybody? I said, I don't know, they're all gone. And I said, have you had breakfast yet? And he said, no. I said, well, let's go to this Teddy Bear restaurant. They tell us it's, this famous place. So we go into the front desk. We say to the guy, we want to go for breakfast to this Teddy Bear restaurant. Where is it? He said, oh, it's just a block up the street there, right there. You can't miss it. So here me and Stan go, down the street we go, looking. We can't find this place. We go a block, 2 blocks. I'm going, must have missed it. And we're looking around. And make a long story short, we must have spent half an hour down this street. And I remember Stan was so calm. I was freaking out because I'm looking like an idiot here in front of Stanton Friedman. And we're sitting there, we're looking at this map. There's a sort of a map of the main town, where all the shops are. And we're looking at this map, and I could see it on the map, and I'm going, it's on the map here. And then we were asking people, do you know where it is? And they didn't know where it was, whatever. So after a half hour, we gave up. We went to there was one restaurant. It was Sunday morning. There was only one restaurant open. We went in there, and Stan told me some stories about, different researchers and stuff like that. And then we left, and we go walking down the street, and there it is, Teddy Bear restaurant, right on the right-hand side. Big, huge parking lot on the corner. And I'm thinking to myself, he had 61 years, I had 45 years. That was 106 years of experience. We couldn't find this restaurant that was right across the street. So go, it's the old thing. It's like, you figure people are really smart. I felt so stupid. I go, unbelievable. It was right there. And between me and Stanton Friedman, we couldn't find this damn restaurant that was 1 block away. You can't miss it. This guy said, you can't miss it. It's right across the street, 1 block away. We never did find it.
Unbelievable.
So let me ask you now your evaluation. You talked a little bit about it, but the situation in ufology now, what do you see? Do you think we're doomed? Do you think that we're going to pull out of this, or where do you think we need to go?
Oh, that's a loaded question. There are so many different directions that I see things going. Probably the worst case that I see happening right now, and I talked to you about this, and I've asked a lot of my guests about this recently, is the experiencer. through everything that's happening with ufology right now, the experiencer seems to be the forgotten soul out of all of it. You know, people or the mainstream public or people who have vested interest in this, everything is about the government. Everything is about, what does the government know? What are they hiding? Give us the secrets. Tell us about the Nimitz. Tell us about other military reports. That seems to be the only thing that exists anymore. And in the meantime, we still have people being taken. We still have people having both awesome and absolutely horrific stories of ET contact. And yet those stories are nowhere to be found anymore. I mean, sure, we hear about Calvin Parker. Sure, we hear about Chris Bledsoe, Travis Walton, the popular ones. Okay, but the everyday person, nobody, it almost seems like the well has dried up for people helping those people, you know? And like when I got into this with Spaced Out Radio a few years ago, it seemed like there was experiences everywhere. Finding an experiencer to bring on the air to tell their story for a couple of hours was very easy. It was like picking cherries off a cherry tree. Now the experiencers have been shoved so far down the rabbit hole that I don't know if they'll ever come out, because we are so focused on what the government has to do and has to say. And I think it's sad. I think we're missing a lot of information. And Bob McGuire and I actually had this conversation a couple of months ago. And it was one of those in-depth conversations that him and I were having. I said, Bob, I said, I don't think we're ever going to get the true disclosure. He says, why is that? I said, because I firmly believe that the answers are within the experiencers and not the government. You get all of these people who are having downloads. You're getting all of these people, like you have studied, Grant, about people, doesn't matter whether they're 70 years old or 12 years old, that are being shown how to fly the craft. You're getting all of these people who are opening up to this entire different genre they didn't know existed. And now we're putting them on the back burner. I think that's dangerous for the field of ufology. The other thing that I find, and this is a little bit more controversial, the other thing that I find about the field of ufology right now is, for years, Grant, people have been told, don't trust the spooks. Don't trust Rick Doty. Don't trust what the CIA, if they're ex-CIA or NSA or any type of alphabet agency, don't trust them. They're going to lead you down a hole. They're going to lead you into an area where you don't want to be. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're being called a nut bar, or being, you know, having some sort of reputation put about you out in the field. We've heard all of these stories before. And now all of a sudden, we're supposed to trust the spooks because they're on Twitter, because Tom DeLonge put them together, because they are the ones who all of a sudden now have the best interest for humanity when it comes to UFOs. You know, how many times, and trust me, I think Lou Elizondo is probably the most brilliant man in ufology right now. I mean, what he knows in his pinky finger is what many of us know in a lifetime regarding this subject. But when Lou sits there and says, you can trust me, you can believe me, I'm going to bring you the truth. Lou, you're a spook. How can I trust you? You led me down a path. You let people be, I'm not saying Lou did, but for years, we have heard about people being deemed crazy, being deemed as fanatical, being deemed as predators, being murdered, okay, killed off, silenced one way or another. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to believe, trust us? And the scary part about it is there's an entire faction that is treating these people like gods, like they are the second coming of UFO Christ. And I don't understand why.
I've been contemplating on this, and I don't have an answer for it other than there are some things that are just timeless with generations, I would say. Like, every generation thinks they invent sex or crazy sex or wild sex. Every generation thinks they've invented cool music, you know. And now I get that feeling about ufology. I think that with TTSA and these, I'll say millennials, even though I think younger than millennials are becoming interested in ufology and seeing it in mainstream. They think it's all brand new, and they think that, and it's that adage we grew up with, you can't believe everything you see on TV. You know, now it's with kids, you can't believe everything you see on the internet or read on the internet. We hammer that in about checking sources. But then when one of the best sources out there is government backed and is popular and seems to be like they're active and doing things solidly in the community, you know, it does. It's like the wildfires we're seeing around the country right now. They did just kind of take off. And I think ufology has gotten a facelift because all of it. And those of us who are anti-plastic surgery are going, what the heck is happening to our community? So.
Well, I mean, I think that we've seen the community split. People want more scientific data. They want more science involved. You know, I hate this fact that, and I realize I'm now in the minority with this, but you know what? When you're an experiencer, Nicole, Grant, you may agree with me, you may not, but when you're an experiencer, it's always aliens. When it comes to UFOs, it is always aliens. When you're not an experiencer, it's never aliens. Now, I know I have been called to question on that by both experiencers and people who come from a scientific background, but that's how I feel. And you know, I don't want someone to come tell me what I should be feeling, you know, or you know, there's a bunch of Twitter trolls out there, and they've kind of laxed off, but for a while there was a group of Twitter trolls out there that the minute you opened up your mouth, whether you were saying something, just asking a simple question, they would all jump on you like you were the worst piece of crap in ufology. How dare you ask a question like, how do you hold a pressless press conference, TTSA? Right?
Right.
And that's the truth of it all. But look, I'm not going to crap all over the TTSA here, okay? I think they have done some very good work. It's proven that they have got the message to a lot of the mainstream media and taken that step that nobody else could do, okay? I think that's all Chris Mellon's doing, okay? I think that I think Tom DeLonge is out to lunch. I think the TTSA, as much as I know that people will say that I am anti-TTSA, that's simply not true. Okay, I've been accused of that number of times. All I want them to do is answer some very simple questions. And the problem is when you argue that, or you bring up that fact on Twitter or on the show, and people criticize you. Well, they're doing this because of this, this, and this. I don't want the answer from you, fanatic. I want the answer from them. And this is what a lot of people don't get. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I have no proof. I wouldn't be surprised if there are members of those groups that are maybe paid off by TTSA or other factions. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever, because there's a lot of people. I mean, could you imagine, Grant, if you got as much rope as TTSA has had?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You think about it. Any other researcher, you take Chris Bledsoe, okay? I think all of us here can agree that Chris Bledsoe is a true experiencer, right?
Yep.
And he's had a number of top scientists, from Bob McGuire, John Alexander, Jim Semivan, a bunch of unknown scientists who have, from big time universities who wish to remain unnamed, show up at his house, and he has produced results. Yet there is a major faction out there who calls Chris Bledsoe a liar, a fake, everything. They're ready to jump down his throat. But this same group will not do the same to the Stars Academy. There's no critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just TTSA, it's Fox News. Okay. When has Tucker Carlson asked a tough question?
Yeah.
Right? When has
Right.
Tucker Carlson, why hasn't anybody asked Harry Reid? Okay, from George, and God bless him. One of my heroes in this field is George Knapp. And I understand why George hasn't done it, because he's probably said, been there, done that. But somebody new who has interviewed former Senator Harry Reid regarding UFOs. Harry, why are you such a loudmouth about this subject, yet you were so damn quiet to the public when you were in office?
Yeah.
Tell us. Why did nobody ask the
agree.
question? I'm sorry?
I said, I agree with you on that point. And I think this has kind of come up in some of our discussions we've had over the last few days with a certain underling producer reaching out to a friend's show of ours, Rich at Goof On. But, you know, just that handout that he was talking about, having that conversation. And this is somebody who's an underling and underling and underling.
Well, he's an assistant. He's an associate producer.
Right. But he doesn't just walk people onto the show. You know what I mean?
No.
And he kind of let it slide in that discussion that he had on air with Rich. And it's that these mainstream media hubs, since they've lacked the interest in it for decades and decades, or have treated it this way, they literally know zero. They don't know who in the community is trustworthy or not trustworthy, who's been found to be a hoax over the years. That he made it sound like they're really starting from scratch.
They are. But this is a topic that, and I've said this many a times on different interviews and even on my show, the mainstream media is just as much to blame on this. And I even said this on the panel that Grant did a couple of months ago, where I had Steve Bassett, Melinda Leslie, and I believe Jay there coming down on me, almost asking or acting like I didn't know how the media works. Yeah. Right. Which was kind of ironic to me, because I'm the only one with a media background.
Well, right? And we were all a little bit like all news, all community news and the mainstream news is good news, but it never got past that point.
No, but the thing is, when and a prime example of this, when I worked on the sports beat, okay, my sports director knew I hated soccer. Mm-hmm. I hate soccer with a passion. All right. And, I was brought up, and I still strongly believe this, that if sport was religion, soccer would be the Antichrist. That's how much I can't stand soccer. So if my boss would force me to cover a Vancouver Whitecaps game, okay, my first thinking as a journalist is this: I don't want to be here. I'm forced to cover a story. So what I do is, after the game, I file my report. Okay, we had a whopping a blowout here, a 1-0 game, right? And so got the goal on a beautiful setup, because everything, if you learn these lines, on a beautiful setup from so-and-so, and you look at the time when it happened. Oh, it happened in the 73rd minute, and this improves the record to 2-0. And okay, you get in and out. Okay. So then you go down to the dressing room, you figure, okay, who's the top 3 guys I need to interview? Because I need 6 clips from this game. All right. So you get Captain, that time, let's say, Alfredo Valente. Alfredo, what do you think of tonight's game? Well, I thought it was good. And, we played well. And here I'm sitting here thinking in the back of my head, are you serious right now? Like, you're actually taking this shit seriously? It's soccer, right? But I have to be pro. So, okay, you guys improved to 2-0. What do you think of your start to the season? Well, they answer the question. Hey, who really stepped up for tonight's game? So what you're doing is you're asking what we call softball questions.
Mhm.
So when you don't know about a topic or you don't like a topic because you feel it's a waste of time, journalists will ask softball questions. This is why when the Pentagon came out last summer and stated, oh, by the way, yeah, we're looking at UFOs and we've been doing this for a long time. Nobody asked about Roswell.
Right.
And then if you remember the weird one out of that all, so the Navy admitted that they were looking. Then the Pentagon admits that they were looking. And then there was this real strange one that didn't make sense. And that was the FBI came out after 43 years after investigating a Sasquatch report to say that their samples of hair that they received were deer hair. Why would they announce that? But nobody picked up on the pattern except me.
Right.
Why would they announce it? What was the point? 43 years. But nobody, because the mainstream media has always made fun of these topics and always thought them as time wasters, they have never, ever grabbed a hold of them and said, what happened at Roswell?
Right.
What happened at San Augustine? What happened in Kecksburg? Why FBI are you now releasing a report that's 43 years old that it's deer hair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why are you doing this? What is the purpose? Nobody asked. That's because they don't know how to ask the question. It's just like with Tucker Carlson. Look, bravo to him for not dropping the story. He, you know what, love him or hate him, and I'm not a fan of his. Okay, I think he's a snide little puke, and he's not a journalist, by the way. He's an entertainer. Fox News has even clarified that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's an entertainment face and a political pundit. Okay, I'm not a fan of his style, but thank God that he has not dropped the ball on this subject. He keeps going at it. Now, what I would like to see is if he is so pro UFO and learning about this, when he's had Harry Reid on,
Mm-hmm.
why hasn't he asked Harry, why were you so silent when you were sitting and running the Senate? Why were you so quiet publicly about this? Now, my critics and my detractors will say, oh, Harry can't sit there and say that. He's out of the office now. So now, of course, you know, he's not feeling well. He may have one foot in the grave, and now he's his consciousness is acting up. You know, he could have said something. Harry admitted afterwards he's visited Area 51, but there were no little green men around there. But he said he's been to Area 51 a number of times. What's there, Harry? What were you looking for? If you have an interest in UFOs so much, were you there looking at S4? Harry's never denied Bob Lazar, who's good friends with George Knapp. Harry, did you know since you were there since the Flintstones were driving cars in the Nevada desert, did you see S4? Right?
Can I ask a related question? You in terms of these guys, I noticed last week you had a prime witness on. This has to do with Bob McGuire bringing on John Alexander. So John is one of these guys that sort of has always sort of had an answer and played skeptic. Can you tell me, like, is Bob setting up these interviews? Is he possible going to set up somebody from TTSA? And what do you think was significant in the John Alexander interview that other people hadn't gotten?
We are trying to, Bob sets up a lot of the interviews and we talk about who's going to come on. With Science Bob and Friends, we want to take it a little bit different than what we do on a normal SOR show. Bob
Explain who Bob McGuire is before we start, because people may not know who Bob McGuire is.
Okay, so Bob McGuire is a former head of the science and mathematical faculty at Virginia Tech University, who literally trained scientists to help the government and very big name space organizations come across for telecommunications, physics, mathematics, everything along that is way above my pay scale that I don't understand. Bob is also former CIA. He is former NRO, which is a National Reconnaissance Organization. This guy has been there, done that, and probably, in my opinion, one of the newest, even though he's 66 years old, one of the newest and brightest stars in the UFO sky right now. And I think Bob is on a fast track of learning. He's had a few weird experiences himself that he can't explain, going back to when he was 18 years old. And now that he has time to, as he is retired, he has time to focus in on them. I think he has gained a real vested interest in a lot of this phenomena, because Bob has one of those brains that doesn't stop learning, and he needs to know everything about everything. And that's why he loves this field. He has also helped set up and support SkyHub, which seems to be gaining some traction, where people can purchase a SkyHub tracker to see if they have UFOs flying over their houses at night. And I think they're onto something really, really big here. I got to meet Bob. My first interaction with Bob was last November, of 2019, where he sent me a tweet. He said, "Damn you, Dave Scott. I'm pissed off with you because your show keeps me up late at night now." And I'm West Coast and he's on the East Coast, 3 hours different. So anyways, then we kind of started chatting, and I found out that he was going to be with Chris Bledsoe speaking in San Francisco at UFO Con in the spring, and I was invited to speak at that. So I'm like, "Hey, Bob, I want to meet you and I want to get to know you." And literally him and I have become very, very good friends, and I'm very thankful of that. And for a guy who, like me, who has my post-secondary education includes only one certificate for a diploma in journalism, broadcast journalism, and here's a guy with 2 PhDs, I feel real stupid around this guy, but he treats me like I'm a human being, and feels that I'm pretty knowledgeable at picking up a lot of things. And because of that, I've introduced Bob to a number of people. There were certain people in this field that Bob trusted, and I'd be like, "Bob, you might want to think again about that one." And then a few weeks later or months later, he'd come back to me and be like, "How did you know about that?" And I'll be like, "I just read people very well." Right. And so we are trying to get someone from the TTSA. I have had zero luck, because TTSA really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? They are very careful with whom they associate any media content with and contact. They don't want people who are going to ask tough questions. Yeah. I have on email from the Stars Academy's PR person up here in Canada with the History Channel, asking me to provide questions, a list of questions that I would be asking them on the air. And after I told them that I'm a journalist, I am a professional, I will not be providing any questions whatsoever, my request for an interview was denied. All right. I have tried numerous times, the most recently is a couple weeks ago, to try and file a formal request for an interview with either Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon to come on Spaced Out Radio. Every media request I have gotten since October 11th, 2017 has been denied. Yet they seem to find time for people who are extremely pro TTSA. There was a time when Tim McMillan couldn't get a TTSA member to talk to him, but now he gets anything he wants. There was a time when Jimmy Church had Tom DeLonge on it all the time, and now he can't get anybody. Linda Moulton Howe, same way. Tom DeLonge was kissing her butt when they right before the TTSA announcement, and then all of a sudden that well is dried up. And I understand why. They're not trying to convince us who are already in this field about the phenomena. They got bigger fish to fry. They want to go after the mainstream and bring this attention to the mainstream. That's why you see them going on Joe Rogan. That's why you see them going on Tucker Carlson every time Tucker says, come on. That's why you see them doing that. But I mean, everything is so calculated, okay, and tied together.
Yeah. We've also seen them, they've launched their own TTSA talks or their own podcast that they do where they, I guess, I assumed that, I mean, they know the questions with that too. It's arranged. They know what they're going to discuss episode to episode. Absolutely. And yeah, it's been a little disappointing. There's just, or I shouldn't say disappointing, it's just bland. To me, there's no new information coming out of their podcast. It's just a reiteration. So.
But there's some tough questions that need to be asked. Now, a lot of people, I get the big thing that I get right off the top is, well, what are those questions? What do you want to ask them? Well, first off, that's none of your business. Number two, when they say yes, I'll have them all laid out. Just like I did when I interviewed George Knapp. Mm-hmm. And George Knapp loved my interview that I did with him. Okay, thought it was very professional, very cordial, very down the middle, the way good journalism should be. But the TTSA, unfortunately, has been about protecting themselves and their assets. And then all of a sudden, if somebody says anything wrong about the TTSA, all of a sudden this whole herd of Twitterites goes after that person. Right?
Yeah.
And look, there's some good people out there who support them. I think, I don't see eye to eye with, when it comes to TTSA with people like Danny Silva. Okay. But Danny's damn good at what he's doing. Mm-hmm. All right. Joe Mergia, same way. Right. I think there's a lot of Klingons, a lot of followers, I'm not going to mention their names. Right. But I also think that, TTSA has done a good job at cutting the wheat from the chaff, but in that cutting, what they've done is they've taken they know who the players are. We're not dealing with stupid people here. Excuse me. But I think what they've done is they've looped in shows like mine, like Jimmy's, like Clyde's, like Dave Schrader's, and people like that. Okay, they've taken professional shows like ours and they've lumped them in with the bogus podcast that says, oh, what do aliens come from? How many aliens have you seen, Lou? Have you ever slept with an alien? Because there's always that idiot trying to be like Howard Stern. Right. And they've lumped us all together and just instead of doing their homework and saying, okay, you know what, Dave Scott and Space Out Radio may not agree with the TTSA message, but let's go in there and let's answer his questions. Let's go because his public is different from the public that is supporting us. So let's maybe educate them, mm-hmm. Right? But it also doesn't help that when you go to the newspaper articles like Leslie Keene, okay, who is a fantastic freelance journalist, but nobody ever questions that she worked for Robert Bigelow. Nobody ever questions that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that her books now are being published by the Stars Academy. So where's the unbiasedness there of the journalism? And this also leads to a big thing that we don't really seem to get in ufology. Okay, control the media, control the message. Mm-hmm. Are we being controlled right now on this topic? Absolutely. Otherwise, if we weren't, name one person who would actually use the term UAP.
Yeah, you're right. So what are you doing? Like, you've got Bob setting up these interviews. What are you doing to try to break through this, to change the sort of the setup that everybody else is using?
Well, Bob, through his time with the government agencies, got to know a lot of these players. Okay, who he's close to or not, there are certain questions I don't ask Bob. It's none of my business. Okay. And I have a much respect for Bob, that there are certain areas that I will not go. He says that he is trying to land one or two of them for the show, and we're working on that. We are. Would I love to see him get Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon? Absolutely. Would they be open to doing an interview without having to provide questions up front? I hope so.
What's his relationship to Richard Dolan's group? Does he work for Dolan's, run his group or something? Does he do something?
I believe Bob runs, he's a chat moderator in Richard's group.
Okay.
Yeah. So Bob, you asked about John Alexander as well. Probably the deepest information that Bob got out of it was talking about Philip Corso and just the information that he provided on there. I thought John held back a little bit, actually a lot, as per usual. John just scares me, man. I don't know why. John Alexander scares the shit out of me. And I John could be ufology's dream, but he's too much of an American patriot to give up what that dream could be. And unfortunately, he's somebody who will eventually go to the grave with every secret he ever has. He won't tell a soul. The only thing you can do with John is listen to his word, that what he says is happening at Skinwalker Ranch is actually happening.
So what does he say is going on at Skinwalker? Does he buy into the whole bizarre stuff?
His answer to me was, everything that you've heard happen there has happened. And I've asked him point blank, what was that? He goes, everything you've heard. John is a master at answering questions with no answers. And he scares the daylights out of me. I don't know why, but he just scares me.
Well, it must be that special forces background. He could take his, little finger and kill you with it,
Exactly.
That's it.
John Alexander is 85 years old, and I think he could still kick all of our asses.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. He does look villainous in some way to me, but then so does John Lear to me for some reason. It's like the Johns. It's like their eyes or how they hold their expression. It's that white hair. It's
right?
Like enter the villain, and there they are.
Yeah.
But no, fascinating, both of them.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, I wanted you to ask him, and I fell asleep before the program ended. I wanted you to ask him his opinion on non-lethal weapons and the Rendlesham Forest case, if he had any opinions on that. So maybe if you have him back next time, I'll be able to stay awake.
That's the problem with John Alexander, is he doesn't give out his opinion. He'll tell you everything that is already public, but he doesn't give out his opinion. And, I don't know why. I mean, that's a man, if the rumors are true about John, and there's been a lot of rumors over the years about John, this man is not only is he, a human Rambo from his time in the military, to the fact that this is a man who has been accused of being on spacecraft while abductions are taking place. He's a man who's been accused of being part of MK Ultra. He's a man who's been accused of helping the U.S. Build their non-lethal weaponry to the point where there's weapons out there that you could aim at someone that will immediately cause them to crap their pants. And I've actually had soldiers reach out to me saying, hey, when I was in Iraq, we actually saw this happen when we had a gate charged at our base. This weird weapon came out, was shot at these people, and next thing you know, they're all holding their stomachs and running away, and you could see the lines going through their robes, right? John has had his pulse on everything, let alone that he was Robert Bigelow's right-hand man for a while, or, he may deny that he was Robert's right-hand man, but there's proof that he was. He is known all about the unknown for a long time. He's almost been like the military voice to this, or the contractor to this. What John knows, I mean, imagine, Nicole and Grant, how far could we go about learning about this if a person like John Alexander, and there's more of them out there, Luis Elizondo would probably be the next one, if they ever actually opened up their mouths to say what they know. Now I understand they're going to hide behind their NDAs, their non-disclosure agreements that they have with the government, and they're patriots first and public second. But, at some point, the words "trust me" aren't going to work.
Right.
Right. Like wait a few years until people start coming out saying, "I saw Luis Elizondo while I was being taken by aliens." Now, I'm not saying that I'm just making up a story here, but you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if it happened. Would it you?
Right. I don't
Luis
know.
Elizondo.
A year ago,
Elizondo
it
to
would
me-
have surprised me. Now, at this point, I've heard Nikola Tesla, I've heard Einstein, I've heard Churchill, both Roosevelts. So no, I don't think I would be surprised at this point, but I would duly note, of course. But wow, I think we could go on and on, guys. We've talked for almost 3 hours. We're 10 minutes shy of 3 hours. So
Well, let's shut it down with, let's ask Dave where we're going with this show, and whether he's got some gigs and all that kind of stuff where we can sort of promote what he's doing, because he's doing a good job here. The one question I would have, if you've tried, I guess you've told me this before, you've tried to get the Canadian radio stations to pick you up, and I just can't believe that they're running old comedy shows from the 1940s here instead of picking you up. So where's that going? Are you still trying to get the Canadians on board with your show?
It's funny. I due to COVID, it's been very difficult. I have one station in Canada, Saga 960 out of Mississauga, Ontario, that plays us nightly. We've taken their audience from, I think they were averaging maybe 100 people a night listening, up to well over a couple of thousand per night listening to their station, which is really cool. It's funny because about a year and a half ago, I had the former head of Rogers Radio. So Rogers Radio up in Canada would be the equivalent to like Premier Radio Networks in the United States. And I asked him to critique my radio show. And so he gets back to me 2 weeks later with an awesome critique, because I really do believe that in radio, you do need people to critique you every now and again, because that's how you learn to make things better. All right. And so he gave us the critique. And one of the things when I talked to him, he stated was, "How is this show not picked up?" My answer to him was another question. I said, "You tell me."
I would agree.
Right. And Canada is a fickle market. I call it, I realize not a lot of people like the band Nickelback, but I call it the Nickelback effect. Okay. Nickelback is one of the highest grossing rock bands the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. They have made, I believe they've sold over 50 million albums. They made the band members filthy, filthy rich. Their concerts are all sold out around the world. Okay. But Nickelback, when they were starting out, could not get a record contract in Canada if their life depended on it. So they tried everybody from Vancouver straight right across the country to Toronto and Montreal, and not a single music producer would pick them up. All of them said the exact same thing: rock is dead. We're not signing rock bands anymore. So they go to the United States, and their album, not Silver Side Up, before that, one that had How You Remind Me on it, Anyways, gets picked up. The song becomes a top 10 hit, takes off. And there's a legendary music producer out of Vancouver named Bruce Allen. Says the biggest mistake he ever made was looking the lead singer of Nickelback in the face, Chad Kroeger, and saying, rock is dead. We're not signing rock bands anymore. And he goes, those guys alone would have made me filthy, filthy rich. Basically his grandchildren would all be millionaires if he would have signed Nickelback. So the point is, with a lot of Canadian entertainers, athletes, actresses, whatever it may be, rock bands, we all have to make it in the States before you can come home and make it in Canada. And Canadian radio is perfect for that. Perfect for that. I know there's a nighttime slot open right across Canada right now. They will not pick me up to host that time slot because I'm not an employee of the station and they want to hire internal. I said, but my programming will bring people in. He goes, I know, but we're not hiring externally for that job.
That's terrible. They'll regret that.
Never know. You would think with 168 or 200 satellite radio channels that we might be able to get picked up, but we haven't yet. But you know what? That's being negative. The positive is our audience keeps growing. Our YouTube channel is growing. We're getting close to 10,000 people subscribing to us on YouTube, okay, who are watching the show nightly. The audience is amazing. We're selling more t-shirts. We're getting the message out. We're becoming more popular. We're becoming over the last year and a half, 2 years, we're becoming a real voice of authority in there, along with the great ones that are out there, whether it's Coast to Coast, whether it's Jimmy, whether it's Dave Schrader, whether it's Clyde Lewis. You know, people are starting to say, well, SOR is in there too. And you know what? We're growing. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. And you know what? We're always going to be a little bit different. We're always going to have a weirder accent. We're always going to pronounce the letter Z, not Z. All right. And that's just the way it is. And that's, I'm okay with that, you know, but when people such as yourselves, or even the people viewing this, take the opportunity to listen or to promote what we're doing, I'm just as appreciative as it was day one, man.
Well, Dave, you're talking to somebody from the States who can appreciate that there are so many wonderful things coming out of Canada. Yourself, Grant, Phil Collins, Alanis Morissette, Dave Coulier. I could keep naming Canadians that I love, but I'll stop. And actually, I've been hanging out with Canadians so much lately online that people keep asking me which province I'm from. And then I tell them Illinois. So that's kind of fun.
Good.
I'm an honorary Canadian now.
Well,
and I don't know. I think we might have lost Grant. Did you see him disappear?
I did see Grant disappear.
That's all
see
right.
Grant. That's okay. We still love Grant.
He just got abducted.
Grant's got aliens.
Oh, he does. He'll say he doesn't, but he does.
Are we allowed to say that in today's day and age, that you've got aliens?
I'm gonna still say it's a 2 thumbs up, double approved thing to say, because we got aliens.
Grant's got aliens right now. Anyways, I want to say thank you for allowing me to come and join you guys. You guys are, both you, Nicole, and Grant are two of the most special people in my little UFO world. And I don't let a lot of people in, but you two have access to the SOR kingdom, and you guys mean a lot to me. And they're, in a field where you can't, you got to be very careful with what you say and who you trust. You are two of the most trustworthy people out in this field, and to be able to not only call you colleagues, but some of my best friends is one of the best things that I could possibly do.
Oh, well, Dave, I'll answer for Grant too and say the feeling's mutual. And honestly, this interview and us getting on record. It's been so long overdue. I've been on your show a few times. Grant's been on there the whole time, rooting you on. And now it's just so great to be able to chat with you and hear this kind of anthology of yours laid out for our listeners. And I'm sure we'll get a few of your listeners as well. But we get to hear little snippets here and there nightly with you. But it's so great to hear it all kind of laid out. And it's so impressive. And I know we didn't really even get to go into detail with all of it. So I know we'll have you back again.
Well, you know what? I am writing a book about it. So
Excellent.
I do have to keep some secrets that people will just have to buy the book for, but eventually one day, hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be done. And I'm about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through. And then it's got to go through the editing process where I need somebody to read through it, edit it, help clean it up a little bit, and go from there. But you know what? Just keep on pushing, and hopefully
something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Grant's
Grant back yet?
Beautiful. Yeah, I got the boot. I only pay $80 a month. So I got booted for.
Oh no. Well, we just wrapped it up. Dave said, he professed his undying love to you while you were gone, so we wouldn't see you blush.
So we'll see it on your channel, and we'll put it on my channel, and we'll do a second session, and we'll go from there. And I want to thank Dave for coming on, and let me know how this thing works out with the Canadians. That's where I left it, where the Canadians should be picking up the show, radio stations, and because I know my sisters, lots of people I know used to listen to all night radio, weird stuff, and when I bring it up, they don't even know about the show. So we got to work on that.
Well, you know what? It all starts with one, Grant. What we need is for you people like yourself in Winnipeg to start hounding the local talk radio stations there saying, hey, we've got a show for you. And that's how it starts. And it still works that way.
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll start bugging them immediately. I'll start bugging mine here in Illinois. All right. Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Nicole, for taping, because you're going to have the tape now. You control it all.
Woo, I'm the boss.
Okay.